Hello and welcome to the Phoenix's Tale, the Harry Potter themed podcast where I will be sharing my life story through a chapter by chapter analysis of the entire Harry Potter book series. I am your host, Gabe. Feel free to call me Phoenix. I will answer to either one. For those who do not follow me on TikTok or Skylight, allow me to introduce myself a little bit here and give you an idea of what my life has been like over the last 53 and a half years. Yeah, just celebrated my half birthday a couple weeks ago. I'm weird like that, and you're going to figure that out. So, anyway, I am a Gen X, 1971, baby. I was born in Michigan. In fact, I currently live in the same town in which I was born. Yippee. I moved to Redding, California in 1975 with my parents and my younger brother, who I refer to as California brother because he still lives in California. 2 years after the move, my baby brother, aka Michigan brother, came along and our little family was set. My parents split up when I was 12. In fact, the divorce was finalized on my 12th birthday in 1983. That was fun. And honestly, that's really when things really went to shit for me because when it came to seeing my parents for who they really are, we're going to dive in. So my father is still. My father was very verbally abusive, and I call it violently verbally abusive, meaning there was a lot of direct insults, a lot of yelling, a lot of ugh. And without my mother's protection, for lack of a better word, he became a monster to me. My father did. Apparently I was daddy's little girl for a while, and I don't remember any of that. Mostly what I remember, my father was just this loud, being in trouble for everything. It was insane. It was insane. But shortly after the divorce, my mother, my brothers, and I moved back here to Michigan, same house, so that my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, could help us out financially, which ended up being a relatively good experience for me. And I know that not a lot of Gen Xers out there, not a lot of people out there, it's not even a Gen X thing. A lot of people just look back on high school as, oh, it was awful. But for me, it was great because I only had 9 months out of the year. Only 9 months out of the year. I had 9 months out of the year where I was free from my father. It was just summer vacation and when he would come visit at Christmas for a couple weeks. So that's really saying something. That I look back and overall think of my high school years and what few memories of that I have remaining. I loved high school. Once we got back here, it was a great experience for me. I graduated in 1989, and the four of us, my mom, my brothers, and I, ultimately moved back to California after I graduated. And except for a couple short-term moves, more locally, over the next 20 years, we remained in California. Been here in Michigan since 2009, and unfortunately, this time around has sucked donkey balls for me. So stay tuned. I will be digging into a lot of this as we roll along. So as we open this episode, I had a trauma event 12 years ago today. If you're watching this on the release date, today is May 21st, 2025. And I finally get to say, I've done my waiting. 12 years of it in Azkaban. My trauma event was May 21st, 2013. I'll dig into that more in a little bit. But that kick-started my PTSD, which I've been raw dogging for the last 12 years, because mental health care here in the part of Michigan where I live sucks. The net result of the PTSD was that I lost my job about 16 months after the original trauma event. So this puts it at September of 2014. And after a decade-long fight to get back on my feet, I'll dive into that more as we go along again. But the key aspect of that is the fact that despite seeking help in that original 16-month period from trauma event to losing my job, no one said anything about PTSD. And yes, I did go see 3 mental health providers and my own doctor in that 16 months. And basically all they did was throw a prescription at me and sent me on my way. In fact, it was January of 2020, while I was working on finishing my bachelor's degree. I started working on in 2012. I only got a semester in, and then things changed at my job, and I couldn't do school and work full time. It was just way too much because of the responsibility I had at work. It really took a lot out of me. But it was when I was taking abnormal psych. So this would have been the end of January, beginning of February of 2020, and literally reading the textbook definition of PTSD, that I realized that that's what I was experiencing, balls to the wall, hardcore, in that first 16 months of the PTSD. So we're going to fast forward a little bit to August of 2023 when I experienced my first panic attack. And that is really what got me to seeking therapy again and question for the first time, oh, do I still have PTSD? I mean, I never got an official diagnosis, which meant I never got treatment for this. Stands to reason that I probably do. So right now I'm still sitting in a lot of, I'm sorry, we're not taking any new Medicaid patients right now, because that's all I have at this point. After I lost my job, it's been 10 years. I haven't had a job since. I have been fighting to get a job. So I am now at the point where no job, meaning no income of my own, no car. I'm living with my 77-year-old mother, who is still working roughly 30 hours a week and fighting cancer. My baby brother, aka Michigan brother, and my now 27-year-old son, who is not my therapist, and I refuse to dump all this shit on him, so he's out. So really, when it comes to any sort of mental, emotional support, I don't have any, because my mom and my brother haven't been there for me. I'm not close with any other family members, and literally have no friends at this point. My only social connection right now is my son, my mom, and my baby brother, and has been for almost 12 years now. But thank God I did finish that bachelor's degree, because it's in psychology, and I now know where to go for proper information. I know where to look for proper information, and been doing the best I can to help myself, because PTSD fucking sucks. I literally would not wish this on a single human being. I really wouldn't. It is awful. It is just awful. And I've been raw dogging it for 12 years. And I know I'm not the only one. So if you're out there and you suspect that you've been dealing with PTSD 5, 10, 20 years, I hear you. I hear you. Find some therapy, please. That's what I'm doing for myself, because I'm doing my best to keep my head above water, and have been for 12 years, but it is extremely difficult, and I'm at a point now where I'm ready to cut the bullshit. So once a month, I'm on the phone to all the places that take my insurance or my particular Medicaid plan, and I just keep asking, and I will continue to do that until there's an opening somewhere. So hopefully that gives you enough information about me to understand that there is going to be a lot to unpack over the next few years that it will take to get through all 7 of these books, because each episode is going to be a single chapter from the book, starting with Sorcerer Stone. So let's talk about the podcast itself for a little bit before we dive in. The Phoenix's Tale, as I mentioned at the beginning, is a weekly podcast with new episodes dropping every Wednesday exclusively on YouTube. Yes, I know. I know. There are a lot of platforms that I could use for this podcast, but after over a decade of attempting to get back on my feet, specifically any efforts to build a business or a side hustle, I've had to settle for scraps of information because all of the good information is always behind a paywall. And I haven't had a job since September of 2014. So I've had no money to purchase any training courses or access exclusive information. I've had to attempt to start some kind of business or side hustle with those scraps, usually in the form of a free webinar that, we know going into it, it's just an upsell to their main product or service. But I got sick of the attitude of those people too, because they seem to have no empathy for those of us who are in a position that I am in right now. And on a certain level, it's no wonder I have been fighting the same fight for over a decade, because number one, the bulk of this decade, I had no idea that I was fighting my own trauma. I was fighting PTSD, and that's what was holding me back. But the other thing holding me back was this incessant gatekeeping by people like that. They have no empathy for a situation where somebody legitimately does not have the money to purchase their product or service. And it's always some kind of a guilt trip about, not wanting to take a chance on yourself. And I'm willing to take the chance. I have no fucking money, asshole. So I'm not going to do that to my audience. I'm just not. I want everybody to be able to listen to this podcast as well as any bonus material I may create, because I am certain that there are people out there who need to hear this podcast to help them in some way. And putting this behind any kind of a paywall is a really dick move, in my opinion. And I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. I'll monetize this podcast in other ways, but preferably ways that don't stick it to my audience in some way. I mean, it's one thing to do affiliate work where I earn commissions for selling goods and services, which I will be doing. That is an option. But it's an option for you. You don't have to purchase those things. I'm not going to be promoting items or services where if you don't have that, you're not going to get the good information from me, if that makes any sense. Because personally, I keep coming back to the fact that, to hide any valuable information behind a paywall, especially after going through what I've been through, I'm not going to do that to anybody else. I'm not going to do that to the people like me who are struggling to find a therapist because of whatever insurance they may or may not have, or money they may or may not have. So I want this to be an option for you. I am not a therapist. I will never reach out and ask for money or claim that I am a therapist. I am not. I only have the bachelor's degree in psychology right now. So I would love it if you would think of it as a friend, I guess. But, somebody who's had personal experience in all of this shit. So, that's why this is available exclusively on YouTube. with no subscription needed. I want this to be available to the people who really need this and could benefit from it. All right. So as far as my social media accounts, you can find me on TikTok at The Phoenix's Tale. If I've done everything right, it shall be on the screen throughout the course of this episode. You can also find it in the show notes, and I'll make sure that I have the proper links all set up for you on the YouTube page and everything. And just search The Phoenix's Tale on either site. As things change in the world of TikTok, I do want to mention this because I am going to be looking for a new home. TikTok has gotten to the point where, I mean, if you're on TikTok and you're watching this, you know what I mean. For me, the current big contenders are Skylight and Neptune. I know Neptune is still in beta. I know Skylight, which is connected to Blue Sky. I do have accounts on both because you have to have a Blue Sky account to access Skylight. But ultimately, I think what I'm going to do is, because what I'm hearing about Neptune when it becomes available to everyone is give you all a second option of where to find this podcast. So I think this podcast will also live over on Neptune, as well as any content I create on TikTok and eventually into not Blue Sky. Blue Sky by default, but Skylight, that's the one I meant. So my primary content creation will be on Skylight ultimately, cross-posting just the Harry Potter content to Neptune, as well as posting this podcast. YouTube, you'll get it all. You'll get it all on YouTube. But again, I'm just cross-posting. My main source of original content in the shorter form video content, like TikTok, will be Skylight eventually. But you can still find me on TikTok for now. And if I've done everything right, again, you should be able to find those links. If you see any accounts anywhere else, Neptune, TikTok, Skylight, YouTube, it's not me. Okay, so please consider that if you are contacted by somebody claiming to be me, claiming to be the Phoenix's Tale podcast on Instagram, for example, I shut down that official page because, fuck Mark Zuckerberg, right? Well, actually, I wouldn't want to, but you know what I mean. I deleted the Phoenix's Tale official Instagram page because Mark Zuckerberg can suck it. So TikTok and YouTube, I'm starting to cross-post to Skylight only at this time, if that makes sense to you. And my apologies, I keep getting text messages. Okay, nothing important. So, how did I come up with the idea for this podcast, and particularly sharing my life story in such a way, this chapter by chapter analysis? Well, it's a great question, and it's an interesting answer, and it's an answer that I want to give you all a little heads up. This is how my autistic brain works, so stick with me. It happened in October 2023 when I was sitting down to watch the Return to Hogwarts special I had just purchased on my Amazon Prime Video account. And as the special started, I found myself wondering why I had been on this Harry Potter kick over the last year, because that really started in October of 2022. Listening to the audiobooks on repeat, reading fan fiction, things like that. And the reason why I question this is because when things are less than ideal in my life and I need a comfort show, I usually turn to Star Trek Voyager for that comfort. So as these opening scenes to that Return to Hogwarts special are popping up, I was just curious, wait, why Harry Potter instead of Voyager over the last year? So as the special settled into talking about the first two movies, Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, I quickly realized that it was because Harry's journey throughout the entire series mirrors mine so closely. I mean, there were so many things that I'm like, yep, 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 yep. And everything from the abusive childhood to the moments of just not wanting to be Harry Potter anymore. We see that at the end of Order of the Phoenix. I've felt and experienced all those things in my own way, and I continued sitting there watching the special, just letting my brain was buzzing with all of the connections that I was seeing in my life and Harry's at the time, and realizing that there are just so many aspects, nuances, idiosyncrasies in the story that I can connect to my own life. Therefore, it's going to make it much easier for me to explain my life to others. However, the podcast idea wasn't quite there yet. So, as the special rolls into Prisoner of Azkaban, what they did throughout the special, if you have not seen the Return to Hogwarts special, is they showed, clips from each of the movies and stuff. Well, it was in Prisoner of Azkaban, it was the scene in the Shrieking Shack where Sirius had just made the mad grab for Scabbers. Remus pulls him off of Ron. Wait, and before Remus can say anything else, Sirius pops off with his epic line, delivered by the amazing Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman is Sirius Black. Oh my God. I fucking loved it, even though I hate the movies. And we will talk about that more. But Gary Oldman is Sirius. This was epic. I've done my waiting. 12 years of it in Azkaban. I got to say it. My brain immediately went to my trauma event, naturally, in May of 2013. And I remember thinking, oh, well, May 2025 will be my 12-year anniversary, as it were. And keeping in mind, this was October of 2023 that I was watching this. Okay, so, but as soon as I thought about that, oh, my 12 years will be May 2025, I realized my brain never stored the actual date. It was always just May of 2025. Well, thankfully, it was very easy to reverse engineer and figure out that it was on May 21st. If you are watching this on the day that it is launching, or launched, I guess would be. If you're watching this on launch day, today is May 21st, 2025. So there's my first connection for you. That's the kind of thing that you're going to get from me there. But anyway, so May 21st, now I had the date. So Google May 21st, 2025, find out it's a Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. And I remember thinking, oh, Wednesday's a good day for new podcast episodes to go live. So if I do this gives me about 19 months to get the ball rolling and get this podcast up and running the way I want. And as soon as I thought that thought, the idea was there. The chapter by chapter analysis, the fun little things that I'm going to interject throughout, some actual psychology that I will be properly researching, and all of that stuff will be in my show notes for the appropriate episodes. But it was all there. It was all there. And it all started because I'm like, wait, why haven't I been on a Voyager kick lately instead of Harry? Or why is it Harry Potter and not Voyager? That's how my autistic brain works. Yeah, you don't want to be in there. It's a fucking scary place. So, part of that too is, and I'm kind of rolling into the first little fun thing we're doing, is including how I do my research. Basically, I read the chapter and I make notes like I'm in school, but I make notes of anything from my life that pops into my head as it connects to that chapter. So, yeah, that's how I came up with the idea. That's what we are doing. Welcome to my escape from Azkaban, if you want to put it that way. 12 years today. Whew. Anyway, so let's do a little fun thing here. So, because it is May, we have 2 character birthdays. I'm not going to do actor birthdays, I don't think. I'm a very big fan of the books. Fucking cannot stand the movies. However, through no fault of the actors who played the characters, it was the writing, it was the direction, it was the time constraints. I mean, you're talking about telling a story that could fill up a football stadium in about this much time across 8 movies. And they did a shit job at it. And there will be discussions. There will be discussions as we roll along about the specifics. But we're going to do something fun. Since it's May, we have 2 birthdays to celebrate this month. First, May 2nd, 1999 marked the birth. And this year marks the 26th birthday of one Victoire Weasley, Bill and Fleur's eldest, and the first Weasley grandchild. So, happy birthday, Victoire. Just last week, on May 15th, Thursday, was, let's live in the world of Harry Potter. She was my herbology professor, Pomona Sprout, May 15th. So, a very happy birthday in the month of May for Victoire and for Professor Sprout. Yeah. So, I hope that gives you a taste. Anyway, a couple more things one more thing that I want to talk about before we really dive into the chapter, which is not going to be much. Those of us who know the story know that the chapter just kind of sets everything up. So there wasn't much for me to pull from. So I thought, well, then let's just make the first episode some of the things that I want you to know moving forward. So we're gonna discuss it. J.K. Rowling. This is a tough one for me because we had no idea until recently, over the last few years, just how transphobic she is. And for a lot of you out there, I know it ruined such an incredible story that has meant so much to millions of people around the world. I, however, this is just me, refuse to let the author herself ruin something so special for me. And I've chosen to reconcile that decision by, one, refusing to purchase any more officially licensed Harry Potter items out there. I will not get rid of what I have purchased prior to finding out the news about J.K. Rowling, because truly, Harry Potter is that special to me. But my refusing to purchase anything where she will benefit financially is the equivalent of my going no contact with my father, which I have been for roughly 23 years now. Okay, so that's how I'm reconciling it. You'll see throughout this podcast, in fact, I'm going to wear a very special sweatshirt that I purchased from TikTok Shop coming up in a few weeks. Yeah. Just as something fun to do. But things like that, I don't know if they're officially licensed. I can tell by the descriptions they can't really use Harry Potter, and so they're getting around any copyright issues like that. Anything unofficial by a single mom or a stay-home mom with her Cricut machine, I am absolutely going to support, because I am supporting somebody who needs it. That's how I figure it. Anything officially licensed supports J.K. Rowling, and I am not going to do that. Gifts, however, are going to be difficult because I have, again, I said I had three people in my life. All three of them know just how much I love Harry Potter. So I've had a tough time reconciling this one anytime they get me something officially licensed Harry Potter, whether it's the I started my collection of those beautiful illustrated copy, the real big ones. I'm gonna have to wait for the rest of them as gifts because I don't want to use my money and purchase it myself. And I would rather focus on the fact that somebody who cares about me, who understands how much I love Harry Potter and is doing it out of an act of love, I can accept a gift. Like I said, it's very sticky, it's very tricky, but for me, it's just a matter of feeling like I do with my father. I've gone no contact to protect myself, to protect my inner peace. I am refusing to purchase with my own money as I get it any more officially licensed Harry Potter items, and that is me. You do you. No hate here. Absolutely no hate here, except for those who hate on others. I know it. Just roll with it. So, what I'm really trying to say here to kind of close this out is you need to do what's best for you. Okay. And I will not hate on you. I will not shame you. As long as you are respectful in the comment section with your discussions with one another. Any disrespect to me, but especially to any of my followers who support me, automatic ban. I am not arguing. I am not trying to explain. I am done with that kind of a bullshit. And this is my podcast. And if you don't play by the rules, you're out. It's as simple as that. No warnings, nothing. So please keep it civil in the discussion, in the comments. So, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, here we go. We're going to dive in to chapter 1. The Boy Who Lived. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. They were the last sort of people you would expect to be involved with anything strange or mysterious, because they didn't hold with such nonsense. How'd I do on that second one? I know all of you know that first one. But yeah, that's essentially the first paragraph of chapter 1. The Boy Who Lived, Sorcerer's Stone. Here we go. So, as I previously mentioned, this chapter is merely a setup for our entire story and for our discussions this week. Which, as I just mentioned, are kind of that housekeeping stuff. We're kind of setting things up for how the podcast is going to go moving forward. But there are some things that we can glean from the chapter as we connect Harry's story to mine. So let's look at what we learn here in this chapter. We learn that the Dursleys are some boring ass people. Mr. Dursley's behavior and attitude reflect this. But thinking about reading the book for the first time, I don't think we really, at least I don't remember having a clue about how terrible things were going to be for Harry, although we knew it wasn't going to be easy. Dudley's already a spoiled brat. We find that out. Throwing a temper tantrum at breakfast, throwing his cereal, kicking his mother, screaming for sweets. I mean, Professor McGonagall clocked that one, as we know, but Professor Dumbledore was insistent. And in the beginning, I'm sure most of us thought that he had no clue just how bad it was going to be until much later in the series. So let's talk about that then too, shall we? I know a lot of you out there absolutely despise Dumbledore for this, and I agree. I absolutely agree, but here are my thoughts on it. You don't have to agree with me. That's totally fine. But now that we do know that Dumbledore did know how bad things were going to be for Harry, I wholeheartedly agree that he should have thought of another plan to somehow keep that charm invoked for Harry's safety, but also giving him a much better childhood. And as somebody who has had an abusive, traumatic childhood, I couldn't agree more. I really could not. However, this is still a fictional story, and real life is not so clear and simple and clean cut. It's just not. As we dive into the final two books of the series, I will be sharing how I think that Dumbledore truly did care for Harry and did what he had to do in order to ensure that not only was Voldemort destroyed once and for all, and yes, I would like to say that that is the correct pronunciation of Voldemort. It is French. That's how the French pronounce Voldemort, and that's how it was intended. And I believe J.K. Rowling said so. Again, you don't have to listen to her. I get it. But it is pronounced Voldemort, and that's how I will be pronouncing it from here on out. But Dumbledore wanted to make sure that not only was Voldemort destroyed once and for all, but that Harry survives to live out the life his parents never got. And as I sit here recording this episode now, I can't help but think about how awesome it would have been for me to have had a positive, loving, encouraging childhood for myself. But I wouldn't be at this point in my life. As wonky as it is right now, I wouldn't be at this point in my life where I'm fighting to make my life the way I want it for a change. And I'm learning to love myself as I am. And none of that could have happened if my childhood had been any different. And I don't want to make it sound like any of us who grew up with childhood trauma deserved it. We absolutely did not deserve that shit. We didn't deserve it. But I would not have learned about myself to the depths in which I currently do. And therefore, I would have never taken such pride in myself with what I've accomplished, what I have survived, what I have healed, and what I am currently healing. And hopefully over the next several months to a year, we're going to see one hell of a transformation in my life. And yes, I will be sharing that as openly as I feel comfortable sharing that, because it is possible to, for lack of a better phrase, go from rags to riches. Okay. And, you know, if it helps you, I am willing to share. But I am genuinely at a point in my life where I am happy with myself. I am proud of the work I've done to heal the traumas, because I have done it 100% by myself. I have not been to a therapist except for one time in my life, and it had nothing to do with my childhood and nothing to do with the last 12 years of PTSD. So I wouldn't be here if my childhood had been any different. And Harry's life would have been so very different had he not grown up with the Dursleys. Better overall, yes, absolutely. But I doubt that he would have survived to the end of it had it been any other way. So yes, life is messy and life is unfair. But it is our responsibility for how it turns out. And just like, you know, my own mother contributed to my childhood trauma and fell short in some areas, and those are things I am currently working on. There is one thing that I have never questioned through all of this, and that is her love for me, and that she did the best she could with what she had at the time to care for me and my brothers. No, she was not perfect. And this is where I hold Dumbledore in my mind when it comes to his decision to leave Harry with the Dursleys. Um, as I said, you're free to think what you want about this, as well as with the issues surrounding J.K. Rowling and her transphobia. Again, no hate here because I do understand. I'm simply explaining my stance on these issues, and I don't care if you agree or not. Just please keep the discussions in the comment section civil, because this is my house, and that's all I'm asking you to do, is to please be civil with one another. Okay? So, as we get to the end of this first episode, I do want to apologize for my erratic thoughts today, because covering the first chapter of any book is difficult, because it's usually where our story is set up and some of the major players are introduced. And hopefully I've thought of everything I wanted to say to set up this first episode, our conversation about J.K. Rowling and her transphobia, the views on Dumbledore and how he should have better protected Harry from the Dursleys at the beginning. So yeah, hopefully I thought of everything. But there is one topic that we can discuss. Excuse me. Before we wrap things up here, and I want to discuss trusting your instincts. And we see this in this chapter. This is something I myself have been working on in my life over the last year or so, and that is getting reconnected to my instincts, to my gut feeling, to what feels off, what feels right, all of that kind of a thing. So we're going to look at Uncle Vernon on this one, because when you think about Uncle Vernon's reactions to all the weird shit that he was seeing throughout the day, and having done the math, we know that the Potters died on Halloween. So this chapter 1 is November 1st, 1981. Okay. But Uncle Vernon, getting back to Uncle Vernon, lost my train of thought there for just a second. Seeing fireworks randomly throughout the day, strangely dressed people in cloaks, owls flying throughout the day, Professor McGonagall in her animagus form, which we don't know about yet. We'll find out about that a little bit later in the book, and especially in Prisoner of Azkaban. The whispers about the Potters, specifically Harry, and being hugged by a complete stranger who was clearly a wizard. And having just read through this one last time before I hit record, it doesn't actually say who that wizard is, but just the mannerisms and the way I felt it reading the books, the way I hear it with the audiobooks, specifically the American versions with Jim Dale. He's the one who voiced the entire audiobook series for Harry Potter, unabridged. He did it all. I always get the impression that it's Daedalus Diggle who gave Uncle Vernon a hug. I mean, can you imagine Daedalus Diggle and like, rejoice, for you know who is gone at last. That's kind of a Daedalus Diggle thing to do. So I always picture that unnamed wizard giving Uncle Vernon a hug as Daedalus Diggle. But the thing is, with all of this, because obviously we know that he knows something about James and Lily that we haven't quite put our finger on yet, going back to when we first read the book. He knew all of this about James, Lily, and Harry, but he kept brushing it off throughout the day, thinking that it couldn't possibly be about them. He even asked Aunt Petunia about Lily at one point, and he lost steam pretty quickly when he saw Petunia's reaction to that, and it's like, oh, we just do not talk about my sister. But we also know he was right. So I wish to express to you, follow your instincts. I'm following my instincts this whole time starting back in October 2023, when the idea for this podcast came to be, that this is what I meant to do. And I meant to launch today, May 21st, 2025. And here I am. So trust your instincts. If something feels off, or someone feels off, or if something or someone feels like the perfect fit, trust it. Your body knows energy and it responds accordingly. It's just up to each of us to learn how our body responds when something feels off or weird or dangerous or whatever, and something feels, oh shit, I really need to do this, or I really need to have this person in my life, or I really need, whatever. Trust it. And it does take a lot of intentional work. I'm not going to lie to you. It's been a lot of hard work and quite exhausting to learn how to trust your instincts. And I will be sharing the different ways again as we go on how I have done this, but it is worth it to get back in touch with your instincts and to trust yourself when something doesn't feel right or when something feels absolutely perfect. And to be honest, really, this was the only psychology topic that I was able to pull from this week's chapter. Again, we're setting everything up, so I'm keeping with that theme this week. There is something else that I want to talk about that popped into my mind when I was actually doing the writing for this episode after I had done the research and everything. And we're going to get more into this as far as the story a little bit down the road, but it has to do with all the secrecy surrounding Voldemort, specifically the fact that the wizarding community at large refused to speak Voldemort's name out of fear. Having done so much healing without the benefit of a licensed therapist, I have found great strength in finding the courage to speak my story, my truth to others. I haven't been perfect on it. If you go check out my TikTok account, you'll see that, I do good for a couple days and then I have nothing to say. Then I do good for a couple days, then there's large gaps in my content creation. But in sharing those, I have found that holds magic, real world magic in and of itself, because this is where we, as the victims of bullies and abusers, we regain our power, because in sharing our story with others so openly, again, as you feel comfortable, there are some things that you're going to find that I am very discreet about, but as we roll along this podcast, I will be more forthright with some of the details of things. And it's because of this. It is because of this. But we remove their power over us when we start speaking our truth. For example, you'll notice throughout this podcast, as we continue down the road, that I have very little emotional reaction to my childhood trauma at this point, as well as the fallout that I've experienced from the trauma event 12 years ago today, and the PTSD 12 years that came along with it, because I keep continuing to share my story with others. When I was in school, I made some of these stories properly written in some of my homework assignments and in the discussion boards, and wherever you can speak your truth, do that, because that's how you take their power away. Because the more comfortable you are with other person's reactions, like, oh, holy shit, Gabe, that sucked. Yeah, you're right, it did suck. Their power dissipates. So it helps you resolve and heal those traumas, because they, the bully, the abuser, has no power over you if you are that brave and bold to start, and just start with one person. It's scary as fuck. I'm not going to lie. It's scary as fuck when you first start out, but keep going. As Simon and Garfunkel said, silence like a cancer grows. In other words, the more you keep their secrets, what they did to you because of shame or guilt for what they did, the more damage it does to you as their victim. I used to have a friend, and I'm going to keep this short and sweet, but I am going to discuss it in greater detail, I think, on TikTok. So look out for that over the next week or so. Long story short, she was sexually abused as a child. And when I knew her in high school, one of my high school best friends, she was still living with her abuser because it was her stepfather. And that was horrific enough as it was. Fast forward to about 7 years ago, there was a brief reconnect of me, her, and the other two girls who were we were a core group of 4 friends, and then we had our peripheral friends, but we were the 4 core group. She clearly is still being held hostage by that. It was very clear because she hasn't told her story. She feels great shame in something that was done to her by an asshole, prick, dickhead, shithead, sexual abuser. Because she's not sharing her truth. She's not telling her story. She's not being unapologetic. This is what happened to me. And that's the power that holds. Silence like a cancer grows. So start speaking your truth. Start with one person and keep going. Scary as fuck, but probably one of the most healing things that you can do for yourself. And that's why I'm here, to share my story, to hopefully, among other things, give you the courage to start sharing yours. So that's going to wrap things up this week for The Phoenix's Tale. As we roll into next week, we are going to be discussing Chapter 2, The Vanishing Glass. So in the meantime, I'm going to get a little cheesy with you here. Let's all raise a glass and cheer in hushed voices to Harry Potter, the boy who lived. Thank you again, everybody. This was amazing. It was such a labor of love over the last 18, 19 months for me, and we are finally here. And I am finally out of Azkaban. And yeah, I've done my waiting. 12 years of it in Azkaban. Been a hell of a ride. It's been difficult. Been lonely, but upward and onward from here. So thank you, fellow Potter fans. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And I will see you next week for The Vanishing Glass. Have a wonderful week.